Record.
All right. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
I can hear you. So our mission today is to talk about putting things in order. And we're going to talk a little bit about email and about doing folder systems. So on the screen we have time management is a great concept, but who has time for it? It's very interesting. When we talk about trying to get ourselves organized, the hardest thing to do is to get started. So when I give you these examples of things that you should do, I'm going to make a suggestion. I'm going to suggest that you don't think right now about all of the things that you have on your computer that are not organized. You're going to start today with the new things. In other words, if you're taking new photographs on your phone today and you want to save them on your computer, I'm going to suggest that you start your good habits today with making sure that you name things properly and put them into a proper folder. And when you have time on another day, you can go back and you can look at what's on your computer that isn't tidy. But it seems to me, from my experience, that when you set up a folder system, whether it's in your email account or whether it's physically living on your computer, and you start using it today and tomorrow and the next day, and you get into the habit of using it, that's when it's easier and more effective to go back in time and start organizing the old thing into those folders that have now become a habit. So that's what I'm going to suggest you do. I have this theory. If you decide next Saturday, I am going to clean out my garage, and you set aside the whole day to clean out your garage, what will happen is there'll be just one thing that throws you off, and suddenly you can't do it for the whole day, so you say, I'll do it another day, because I can't do it for the whole day because of this phone call or this appointment or whatever it is. Instead, when you want to get something done, just set aside 15 minutes. Say to yourself, I'm actually not going to do it for more than 15 minutes. I just want to do the garage for 15 minutes, but I'm going to do that for 5 days in a row. And usually what happens is once you get started in that 15 minutes without having it be this huge task, you actually work a little bit more than the 15 minutes. And if you do it consistently, at least you'll get 15 by 5 done in 1 week, as opposed to keep pushing it off because it's such a big project and you're setting aside a whole day for it. So that's sort of my suggestion about your time management when it comes to organizing or saving what's on your computer. So let's look at these questions. An honest answer to these questions, you can answer to yourself. How many of you have more than 30 emails in your inbox? I remember asking my mother that question years and years ago, and she had 18,000 in her inbox. Because from the time that she had started getting emails, especially if they were from me, she never deleted them. So she was sort of using her inbox as a permanent storage facility, which I'll talk about in a minute about why I don't think that's such a great way to organize things. How many of your documents or photographs do you need to open to figure out what they are? And that's a simple fix about giving it a proper, complete name so that you know what it is, so you don't have to keep opening the pictures because they're called image with a number after it. And can you find what you're looking for on your computer? Again, that's a very simple fix by organizing a filing system so that you can actually find what you're looking for. So first, let's just talk about the email, because I know we're talking about folders, but there are folder systems that you can create when you're using an email. So my theory about email is this. You generally only touch it once. And it's not always true, but that's a generalization. So when an email comes into your inbox, like Barry emails me about today's talk, I'm going to do one of 3 things. I'm going to reply to Barry, which usually takes me a little bit more time than it should. But I reply to Barry, and once I reply to Barry, I throw away his email to me because the sent email that I sent to Barry has his initial email to me. So I still have a record of that email. If I wanted to keep it, because for some reason it has a really good piece of information in it that I know I want to hang on to for a long time, I would take that email and I would put it into a folder that I've set up in my email account. Every email account has the capability of setting up a folder system. So I wouldn't have a folder called Barry because I don't get that many emails from him, but I might have a folder called Computer User Groups or Florida Computer User Groups if I really want to drill it down. Or I might even just have a folder called Pending or To Do within my email system so that I know I can always go to the pending folder and see what is it that I set aside to look at later. So I either answered the email, I filed the email, or I delete the email. If I've completed my task with the email, I just delete it out of there. The same thing is true with your sent folder. I use my sent folder with just as important organizational skills as my inbox, which means I look at my sent folder to see what emails I've sent that haven't been replied to. In other words, if Barry sent me an email and I replied to him, I would have it in my sent folder and I would check my sent folder at night and go, oh, that's interesting. Barry hasn't answered me yet. I'm going to resend the email because it's important and it's timely and I want to get an answer from him. So is there something happening with our sound over there? Are we okay? Are we good on sound?
We're good.
We're good. Yeah.
Okay, great. So when you're naming something like a document versus an email, what we want to do, and we'll talk about this in more detail, we want to always name things with who, what, and when. Because Barry and I and your computer user group, we've had a relationship for a very long time. So if it just said Barry, it's not specific enough. I want to have a document say who, what, and when, and I want to have an email have the subject give us the same information. We'll go into that in 1 second. So before we talk about how to use the subject in your email, I just want to be clear that when you're using proper netiquette, along with using it to be able to organize your emails, you're also protecting your own privacy. So I just want to throw this in here. I've said it before. I want you to be very clear about whether you're sending an email using the to feature, which means the primary recipients. The to and the carbon copy, primary recipient is the to person, the CC is the secondary person or people. The BCC, the blind carbon copy, means that everybody who's in the blind carbon copy isn't going to see each other's email addresses. So that's so important when you're sending out an email to multiple people. So it's just to protect your privacy and to protect your friend's privacy. I really recommend, if you're not doing it, that you use the blind carbon copy more. And remember, when it comes to anything on the computer, for your own safety and your privacy, you are the front door, which means you're releasing information by virtue of using certain programs. When you use something like Facebook and you put down that your vacation just started today and there's the picture of the sunrise, just be alerted that you're letting people know that you're not home for a period of time because you've let them know your vacation started today. So as I've said before, just again, these are just some safety measures I wanted to throw in. Always think before you put something online, ask yourself, would you put it on the front door outside, on the front door of your home? Because that's what you're doing when you put it online. And that includes when you're sending an email. Because even if you're sending an email to one person, I can't stop somebody from forwarding my email or printing it and mailing it to a telephone pole. So even though it's a single interaction in your mind, you can't stop somebody from sharing it. So I just want to say that. And the last thing about safety, since we're on this, is the should I question. And I've said this to you guys before. When you're on the computer and something pops up on the screen that says you need to increase your security, or you don't have enough space, or you should add this component, when you ask yourself the question, should I? It means you actually don't know the answer. So rather than answering that and bringing something nefarious onto your computer, I'd go to somebody in your computer user group and I would say, listen, I got this thing on my computer. Is it legitimate? Should I do it? Because if you're asking should I, by its nature, it means that you actually don't know the answer. So that's a little safety thing on the side here. But let's get back for one moment to organizing your emails. The subject to your email is as important if not more important, than what's in the body of your email. Because the subject of your email directs the person who's receiving it as to what the email is about. It also directs you when you look in your sent folder to see what the email is about. So if Barry and I have been having a correspondence about doing this meeting, and in it says, what's the date today? 125 webinar. It might be that after 125 webinar, as our email evolves, I'm going to add some words to make sure we know which email is the specific email about creating a Zoom meeting. Here's the Zoom ID. Here's the handouts that I want you to print for the group. Any of those things should come after that basic information of 125 webinar, January 25th webinar. So be sure that you update the subject as the conversation changes. If Barry and I suddenly started having a conversation about having dinner together tonight, I might start a brand new email about that, so the thread or conversation is brand new. But if I didn't, I certainly would change the subject so that I can then look at my send folder or in my inbox or Barry in his inbox and know which email is about strategizing where we're having dinner versus figuring out how we're doing the Zoom meeting. So don't ignore that subject. And also, though, on the flip side of that, don't put your whole message inside the subject. I got a subject in email the other day where the subject was actually 3 lines long. It actually allowed for that. The person just did their entire email in the subject box. So we don't want to do that. But when it comes to helping you organize, if the subjects of your email are very clear and you create a folder system and you go back in time, you'll be able to just plunk those emails directly into the folders based on the subject alone. And if you see a bunch of emails with the same subject and it's one long thread, you only need to keep the most current one of that long thread. You can get rid of all of the other ones because they're all within that one last email. So I can't emphasize enough how helpful it is to the recipient and the sender to be good with your subjects. Let's go on to talking about a folder system on your computer. So, some people have their desktop and it's just filled with images representing either documents they have or photographs that they've been keeping. I have worked with people that their desktop is so mucky, they literally have layers of images on top of each other that we sort of have to pull off of each other to see what they are. A folder system would eliminate all of that. Some people, it's not on their desktop, it's in their documents folder. And they have image after image after image, and document after document. I kind of have a theory. If you have 5 or more documents or images that fall into a category, then you should have a folder for them. So my documents folder has several, has lots of free floating things that don't have a specific home they should go in. But if I have 5 images or documents pertaining to the same subject, then I create a folder. And this is a random thing to tell you about, but I have a little house in Connecticut, and I've been trying to ask myself whether I want to put gingerbread on it, that adorable stuff that was sort of there with Victorian houses. And I went to Martha's Vineyard, and they have a whole neighborhood that has all the gingerbread on the houses, and I took a bunch of photographs, took probably 20 photographs. Because I have more than 5 photographs about the gingerbread on those houses, I created a folder that says MV for Martha's Vineyard, gingerbread photos, and the year that I took the pictures. So I created a folder because I knew I had more than 5 objects pertaining to that particular subject. And so I would suggest to you, in trying to just sort of look at what's on your computer, don't think about moving the things right now. You're going to create a folder system that's going to be the system that you used from this point forward, and then you're going to go back in time and clean up what's on the computer. So look at an area of your computer, whether it's on your desktop or whether it's in your documents folder, and look at it and see what's there. And say, oh, I have all these letters that I've written to my accountant. I probably should have a folder called taxes or your accountant's name. Or maybe I'm going to create one folder called correspondence. And within the correspondence folder, I'm either going to have individual folders for the people that I correspond with a lot, like your accountant, or maybe I'm going to have one folder called correspondence and it's subfolders within that that are broken down by year. That's the way I do it. So I have a correspondence folder, and within that correspondence folder, I have 2019, 2018, 2017. You can set up folders for the past 5 years, not putting stuff in them yet, but getting those folders there at the ready to put things into the folders. So the first step is the old-fashioned way with a piece of paper and a pen, is to actually look at what's living on your computer and start making a list of what are the folders that I should create, and do they live within, some of them live within each other. If you look at the illustration that's up on the screen right now, I have a main folder, it's called the Abby folder, and within it I have many folders, but this is an example of 3 of them. There's a correspondence folder, a travel folder, and a recipes folder. Within those subfolders, I can have more subfolders, like under correspondence. There's Abby, there's correspondence, and then there's 2013, 14, and 15. In the travel folder, I may not have subfolders, or I might for a specific trip, but I might have other documents that just live in the folder. And the same thing for recipes. I might have separate folders for all the appetizers, entrees, or side dishes, or I might just have documents that have those. Your first step is to evaluate what's on your computer and make a list of the folders. And obviously you've got a lot of scattered things potentially on your computer. Look at what the bulk is. Like, I think you probably might have a lot of photographs. And when you look at those photographs, how do you want to break those down? Do you want to break them down by, you've got 3 children. Do you want to have a folder with the name of each of your children on it? And all of the family pictures for that branch of your family are going to go into those folders? Or do you want to break them down chronologically? So these are all the pictures from 2018. And within 2018, you might have a folder system broken down by your kids' names. Or it could be a folder called grandkids, and all the grandkids go in that. Or it could be folders broken down by event. It could be, trip to Africa and Christmas and, whatever those other things are. So it's important to sort of put it down on a piece of paper first so that you can brainstorm what makes the most sense. And the key is, it's what makes the most sense for you. How I would organize my files is potentially very different than how you would organize your files. So it's important to think it through, write it down, and live with it for a little bit. Look at it for a little bit and say, does that make sense to me? Because once you've created your folder system, it's consistency that makes it work. And consistency works if you actually speak to your instincts. What are your instincts about whether I do things chronologically or by event or by the people in the pictures, right? How does my head work? So it's sort of interesting to kind of ask yourself that question, like, how does my head work when I want to do this? So your folder has a main name, like you see, Abby, correspondence. Your subfolders break it down a little bit more, but when you name a document, whether it's an image or whether it's a document, a piece of paper, so it's a file. And this is where, just to rewind, this is where the language of technology could have me shoot myself in the head. Because a folder is what you're seeing on the screen in front of you. We know what a folder looks like. In technology land, they call an image or a document or an Excel spreadsheet a file. Now, in our 3-dimensional world, a file folder is where you put things. We call it a file folder. We're going to rejigger that in your head and say there are folders that contain things, and files are documents, Excel spreadsheets, images. So let's take the words file folder out of our vocabulary for now so there's no confusion. A file is document, spreadsheet, image, video, music clip. A folder is what you move it into. I hope that makes sense. So when you're naming your folders, it can be a broad, sweeping name. because you're putting several things in there. But when you name an image or you name a document, it goes back to what I said on that other screen. Who, what, and when. If it's somebody's birthday, it's Nancy's birthday, I'm not going to name a picture Nancy's birthday. Nancy has a birthday every year. I need to be specific about the when in the image so that I know it's Nancy's birthday from 1979 or it's Nancy's birthday from 2019. We want to know who is in the picture, right? So in this case, it's Nancy's birthday, but maybe there's some other people in the image. Now, you don't want to have a long name. If it's Nancy and her 2 grandkids, I could say Nancy and grandkids, birthday 2019. You could also use initials if you want to sort of make it a little bit briefer but clear. But you want to be sure it's who, what, and when. So if it's the letter that I write to my accountant, and I want to keep it on my computer because every year that letter changes very little, so why rewrite it again and again? Instead, when I go to create that document, I'm going to give it a name. I'm going to say the accountant's name. I'm going to say tax information. I'm going to say the year of the tax information. I might even be more specific, and it gets a little detailed, but you might put in the exact day that you wrote it. And that's important if you're writing something that is in motion. In other words, when I'm writing a book and I'm working on chapters, I really get methodical about how I name the document I'm working on because I don't want to get mixed up and open up an older version that's not current and make changes to that. So when I'm writing something that's ongoing, even when I put together this PowerPoint presentation, when I started it a few days ago, I gave it the date of each time that I touched it at the end of the document so that I know it's the document I'm presenting on the 25th, but this is the one that I made on the 22nd, and then I change it to the 23rd, 24th, so I know which one is the current one. So your folder names can be more general, but when you name a document or an image, you want to be as specific as you can possibly be. So you have images living on your computer, and when they come off of your phone or they come off of your digital camera, they usually have IMG and a number. They have some random information. I'm going to suggest that as soon as you pull an image onto your computer, whether it's something somebody sent to you in an email, whether it's coming from your device, you immediately give it a name. And giving something a name is as simple as right-clicking on it if you're using a PC, and the name that it has, that generic name, will be highlighted, and you can type in the who, what, and when of the image. If you're using a Mac or an Apple computer, instead of right-clicking on it, just click on the existing name once, count to 3, and click on it again, and it will be highlighted, and you can type in the new name. That's the habit you want to start today. Don't worry about renaming old things right now. Get in the habit of when something new is coming onto your computer, whether it's coming from your device or an email, or you're creating a document. Give it a proper name right away. We want to have who, what, and when right away. I'm going to repeat those instructions for renaming something that's existing on your computer. Have it closed. Don't have the document or the image open. But you're looking at the icon, and underneath it is the name it's been given, and it's probably something generic. Right-click on that. If you have a PC, it'll be highlighted in blue, and then you can type in the who, what, and when that you want to, and then you just hit the return key, and that's been saved. If you have an Apple or a Mac computer, instead of doing that, have the document or the image closed. Go to the name of the image, click on it once with your mouse, count to 3, click on it a second time, it'll become highlighted, then you can type in the proper name that you want with who, what, and when, then you can hit the enter key or the return key, and it'll save that change. So if you do that right away, even if you don't put them in the folders right away, then you don't have to open it up a second time to see what it is. We want to name things in the moment that you get them so that you know what they are right away. I want to avoid having to open up things unnecessarily. So these are the instructions for how to create a new folder on a PC. Super easy. These are also on my website. If you go to askabbystokes.com and go to, I think it's the handouts there, you'll see this listed. So super easy. You can right click on a blank space on your desktop. You left click on the word new, and then you left click on the word folder. Right at that moment, take your hand off the mouse and type in the name of the folder, because at that moment is when you have the availability to give it a name. Type in the name of the folder and hit the return key or the enter key, and you're done. You can always rename it afterwards if you decide that you did something wrong. But it's super easy to create a folder. If you want a folder within a folder, once you've created that folder and named it, like let's say it's correspondence, open up that folder, right click inside that folder, and you'll have the same opportunity to go to new and folder and name it and hit the enter key. Very simple and straightforward. So in an immediate way, I want you to start naming new things that come onto your computer right away. I want you to set up a folder system so that you have the folders available to you, and then you can just click, drag, and drop the items into their designated folder. You can't do that when they're open. All of these things that happen to a document or a photograph, close it. So you're just looking at the icon, at the image representing it, and that's when you can rename it or you can remove it. And I don't know how many people in that room have PCs or Mac computers, but these are the instructions on how to create a folder if you have an Apple or a Mac computer. And again, it's super simple. You're just going to click on any blank place in the desktop, go up to the word file, click on the word file, then click on the word new folder. You don't click the mouse or anything, take your hands off and type the new name, and then hit the return or the enter key. So that's the way that you can sort of structure in your mind how you're going to organize these things. You also need to worry a little bit about how are you going to save what it is that you have on the computer. It's very interesting. We all remember when we used to take photographs and you had the camera and you took the film out and you sent it off and you got back your pictures and you got back your negatives. And if you were super organized, you would tuck those negatives away someplace safe and sound so that if you lost your pictures, you could always make more copies. That is very different now. What we've got are all of these important family images that are on somebody's phone, and maybe they've emailed it to somebody, and so that person has it in their inbox, and maybe they're organized enough that they've taken it out of their inbox and they've named it and put it in a filing system, but maybe they haven't. So I want to be sure, the most important photographs from my childhood I have in a hard copy so that I actually physically have them, and they're on the wall. I tend to less and less, now that we have more and more opportunities to use digital photography, I'm actually having less physical images around. It's interesting. So if you want to have a physical image of the picture, you could print it on your own printer, on photo paper. Be sure that's only laying ink on top of a piece of paper. It's not going to last for 40 or 50 years. It's not the same as processing an image. I have images of when my grandmother was a child. They wouldn't last that long if I printed them on my own printer, because it's just laying ink on a piece of paper. If it's an important family picture that you want to preserve, have it actually processed. You can send it via email to places that can process your film for you. You can bring it on a flash drive to your drugstore and have it processed there, but it's different having an image processed for posterity than printing it on your own printer. But what we're looking at now on the screen are some saving options for you. So in the top left, what you're looking at is a flash drive. It's also called a thumb drive. You can take the folders, once you've created the folder system, you can take the folders and you can move them onto a flash drive. And again, it's as simple as a click, drag, and drop into the flash drive. Once you put it into your computer, there's a folder that represents it, and you can click, drag, and drop things in there. I don't think of flash drives as storage facilities because they're small, they're hard to label, and they're easy to lose. So I think of a flash drive as something that I use to go from point A to point B. If I had a bunch of pictures or my PowerPoint presentation and I was in Florida and I wanted to give it to Barry, I'd put it on a flash drive and I'd hand him the flash drive and he could put it to the computer and he could open it up. a lot as a backup. When I'm working on a book, at the end of the day, that very last version of the book in the document that I'm working on, I'll save it on my computer, I'll back it up, but just to be on the safe side, I'll also email myself the latest version. You can't have too many backups around because some of them can fail. My computer could lose everything on it, but my email service will remember that email. Or my email service could lose everything on it, but I have it on my computer. Or I sent myself an email and my email service lost everything, and I had it on my computer, but it lost everything, but I've got it on the flash drive. So depending on how important it is, when I'm working on a book, it's very important. I cover my bases, and I've got it on a flash drive, I've got it in Dropbox, I've sent it as an email. I just can't risk losing all of that work. And you might feel that way about something you're working on, or about photographs that you have that you would desperately not want to lose. So, more than one of these methods is the best way to do it, just to be sure. So what else you see on that screen, which is my preferred way right now, depending on what it is we're talking about, I just did a safari for 2 weeks in Africa. We went to Kenya and Ethiopia. It was completely amazing. We have a lot of photographs from that trip. So they've come in emails. I have them on my camera. I also have put some on a flash drive so I could share them with people, but I burn them onto a CD so that I can label it with a Sharpie and say, Africa trip 2019. So that should I want to show it, I have a whole little, they're just in folders, these CDs, I can just pull it out and look at it. Now at some point, CDs are going to go the way of the woolly mammoth, and I'll have to be sure that I've transferred it onto the next medium. But at the moment, I still put it on CDs. But I also utilize online services that store your information. So let's speak for just a moment about what they refer to as the cloud. If you're using Apple products or you're using an iPhone, they talk about iCloud. We hear about Dropbox. There are many different systems where you can store your information on the cloud. What is the cloud? The cloud is to computers as to what Manhattan mini storage is to me living in New York City. So I live in a relatively small apartment. I've been here 26 years. It's amazing what you can accumulate and what you don't need, but what you don't necessarily want to get rid of, like family china or an extra bicycle or my winter clothes. Because I can't fit them here in the apartment, I don't do this, but many people do, I can pay for Manhattan mini storage. And Manhattan mini storage here is where I can take my objects and put them off-site. I have access to them whenever I want to go get them, but they don't take up space in my apartment. That's what the cloud is to your computer. The cloud is where you can take photographs or videos or documents and you can put it off-site. So as long as you have access to the internet, you can always go get those items and look at those items. You could still have them on your computer, so you could use it as a form of backup, or you could take it off your computer and put it there so it doesn't take up space on your computer. Again, if it's super important, you want to have multiple ways that you're doing that. You don't want to have it be that it's only in Dropbox or in iCloud and it's nowhere else in case they somehow make a mistake and lose everything, which is not impossible. So I like using the cloud to store things, but I don't have it be my only way of storing things. Some of these services are free. Some of them are free up until a certain point of storage. Some of them, if you want to store gigabytes versus megabytes or terabytes versus gigabytes, they're going to charge you more according to how much you're storing. So that you want to be aware of that. I, of course, as a cheap Connecticut Yankee, I like everything that's free. So, I don't store more than I need to as far as making sure that I don't have to pay for it. I just want to get back to this notion of how do you actually focus on what you're doing. So the National Institute of Health says that you shouldn't work at the computer for more than 40 minutes before taking a 10-minute break for whatever it is you're doing on the computer. I'm going to remind you of that suggestion that actually only set aside 15 minutes to do this organizational stuff because it's phenomenally boring. And if you set aside too much much time, you'll have an excuse not to do it. But if you start doing the 15 minutes every day, make a cup of coffee and a couple of cookies and sit down and sort of the time it's going to take you to drink the coffee and eat the cookies, that's the 15 minutes that you're going to start to harness this information on your computer, whether it's renaming documents or creating folders or moving things into them. But 40 minutes on the computer, 10 minutes off all the time. And then 15 minutes on the computer for you to start your organizing, but try to do it every day. We are coming to the close of how long that we can have this recording going. So I just wanted to bring you back to my website to remind you of where the handouts are that I showed you. If you go to my website and you see where it says resources, under resources, there's a list there for teachers and librarians. And on that list, you'll see a list of different documents that I've done with step-by-step instructions. And you'll see right here it says how to create a folder. It's the 5th one down. So you can go to my website and you can find those step-by-step instructions and you can print them. As another reminder, you can also go to my website and watch my videos. And under each video, there's also step-by-step instructions. They look like this, that you can print so you can watch the video, have the instructions, and do the action at the same time. So to pimp the book for just a moment, it is still out there. It is this thing on? You can always email me questions at askabbystokes.com, and you can visit me at facebook.com, Ask Abby Stokes. That's actually the Facebook page where I put on things about technology, and I'm very happy to answer your questions. I'm now going to stop recording so that this is actually a file that I can send to Barry for YouTube. But we can continue now with our conversation, and I can answer a few questions.
Let's give Abby a great hand for her presentation.